I found out the hard way that the people you trust the most can become the ones who push you to the edge sometimes without ever realizing they've crossed a line. Asterisk before I begin, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Asterisk. I never thought I'd start a Tuesday morning by being rolled out of my workplace on a stretcher. But life doesn't always give you warnings. That day began like every other at Clayton and Reeves Insurance, where I'd spent a dozen steady years drowning in forms, policy numbers, and lukewarm coffee. Nothing unusual, just the kind of day you forget before it's even over. Asterisk. Till my chest decided it had other plans. Asterisk. I was halfway through reviewing a claim file when a crushing pain tore through me. Sharp and unforgiving, like someone trying to squeeze the life out of my rib cage. It shot down my left arm exactly the way those health posters describe the ones nobody pays attention to until they're living the symptoms. Asterisk. My coworker Lucia noticed before I could even form words. She rushed toward my desk, panic all over her face. Are you okay? Should I call someone? Asterisk ambulance, I managed to whisper, gripping the edge of my desk as everything started fading around the edges. Asterisk, I don't remember collapsing. I only remember darkness swallowing the room. Asterisk, when I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm and machines beeping around me. A stern-faced cardiologist stood at my bedside, explaining in calm clinical tones that I'd had a mild heart attack. Apparently, 63 years on this earth had caught up with me in one explosive moment. Asterisk, we've contacted your emergency contact, the doctor said. Asterisk, my son, Ethan, should be arriving soon. The word echoed in my head long after he left the room. Asterisk, I waited. 1 hour, then 2. Nurses came and went, always with those soft practice smiles that told me they'd seen this kind of loneliness before. I kept glancing at the door expecting Ethan to appear. Maybe even my daughter-in-law, Lena, who always claimed we were family, no matter what. Asterisk, but the hours passed. Day 1 came and went with no sign of him. Asterisk, day 2 brought flowers from coworkers. Not family. Asterisk on day 3. When I finally checked my phone, I didn't see a missed call from Ethan. Asterisk instead, I saw a social media tag. Asterisk, my daughter-in-law had posted a bright, polished family photo of the 4 of them at an upscale restaurant. Everyone smiling, glasses raised. And there it was, written beneath the picture like a punch to the gut. Asterisk, perfect day without the drama. Blessed for peaceful family time. No mention of me, no concern. Not even a call to see if I was alive. I stared at that caption so long, my eyes burned. Drama. That's what my hospitalization was to them. An inconvenience to their curated, picture-perfect life. Then my phone vibrated violently in my hand. Call after call. Message after message. 86 missed calls from Ethan. All suddenly urgent and demanding. Asterisk, Mom. Pick up. We need you right now. It's serious. Asterisk, answer your phone. Asterisk, for a moment. I almost responded out of old habit. Asterisk, I almost slipped back into that role I'd played for too many years. The mother who dropped everything. Who fixed every emergency. Who carried everyone else's weight without asking for anything in return. Asterisk, but then I remembered that polished, happy photo, that caption, that word drama. Asterisk, instead of calling Ethan back, I made a different call, one that would change every relationship in my life. I called my lawyer. Asterisk, I sat across from attorney Samuel Greer the following week, feeling steadier than I had in a long time. The hospital stay had forced me to slow down, but it had also cleared the fog I didn't realize had been sitting over my life for years. Samuel flipped through the paperwork. I'd brought him documents I had gathered after a long, uncomfortable look at my own financial history with Ethan. Asterisk, you're certain you want to proceed with this? He asked, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. He wasn't challenging me. It was the tone professionals use when they know what's coming next will stir up storms. Asterisk, I've never been more certain, said. Asterisk, the truth was, The crisis with my heart had opened my eyes more brutally than I wanted to admit. Because when Ethan finally did show up on my doorstep, as though I'd been discharged. No, Leslie didn't bring concern or remorse. He brought attitude. Asterisk, he hadn't asked if I was recovering well. He hadn't apologized for ignoring the hospital's messages. He hadn't even looked guilty. Instead, he barged into my living room with frustration painted across his face. Asterisk, Mom. You can't just ignore 80 calls, he snapped. As though I had inconvenienced him. I asked him calmly why he hadn't visited me even once. His response. Asterisk, Lena said you were probably exaggerating. Besides, we're busy. The kids have school, work is insane, and honestly, every time something happens with you, it becomes a whole production. Asterisk, he said it like my near-death experience had been an overreaction. Like the cardiologist should have checked with Ethan first before diagnosing me. Asterisk, I asked him to leave. Politely, but firmly. That alone shocked him more than my heart attack had. Asterisk, that very night. I sat in my living room and dug through 8 years' worth of bank statements and handwritten notes. Money I had given them, always labeled as temporary help, had become a staggering pile of withdrawals. I added it all up twice. It's because the final number made me nauseous the first time. $48,000. Loans for urgent repairs. Unexpected bills, career opportunities, temporary setbacks, and countless other creative excuses. All undocumented. All forgotten the moment the money hit their account. Asterisk, by the next morning. I had scheduled a meeting with Samuel. Asterisk, he reviewed the packet with eyebrows, slowly climbing higher. Asterisk, so you want to revoke the financial authority you granted your son last year, he said. Scanning the power of attorney document, and you want to restructure your will completely. Asterisk, yes. And I want to get every loan formalized. Asterisk, I placed another folder on his desk. Inside was a list. Dates, amounts, reasons, all the proof I'd kept because a small ignored part of me had always known something wasn't right. Asterisk, Samuel tapped the folder lightly. You've been thorough. Asterisk, I should have been thorough 8 years ago, I replied. Asterisk, he hesitated for a moment before asking, may I ask what brought this on? Asterisk, so I told him. About the hospital. About the ignored calls. About the restaurant photo. About the caption. About being labeled a burden while I lay in a hospital gown wondering if I'd wake up again. And about the realization that for years, I've been treated not as family, but as a safety net. Asterisk, Samuel didn't interrupt. When I finished, he simply nodded with a quiet understanding. Asterisk, everything you're asking for is legally sound, he said. It may create tension. Asterisk, that's fine. I cut in. I've lived with tension for years disguised as obligation. He began drafting the documents. The following afternoon, I accompanied him to Ethan's home, a house I had unknowingly helped fund. Lena peeked around the kitchen doorway as Samuel handed Ethan the folder thick with contracts and legal notices. Asterisk, Ethan flipped through the pages, his face contorting from confusion to irritation to outrage. Asterisk, what is this? He demanded. Asterisk, a formal repayment agreement. Samuel explained. Your mother is converting all previous financial assistance into documented loans with standard interest. Asterisk, Lena's expression drained of color. Ethan's anger sparked like gasoline. Asterisk, you can't be serious, he hissed at me. After everything we've done for you. Asterisk, I stayed calm. To calm for his liking. Asterisk, what exactly have you done for me? I asked. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And for the first time in years, the silence between us told the truth. Ethan's silence only lasted a moment before Lena stepped in with that sharp tone she always used when she felt cornered. We include you in everything, she snapped. We invite you for birthdays, holidays, family outings. Don't act like you're alone. The way she said include made something deep in me twist, as if my presence in my own son's life had been some type of charitable donation on their part. I kept my voice level. Being invited isn't the same as being valued. That clearly struck a nerve, because Lena's expression went from offended to outright irritated. Oh, please. You're blowing everything out of proportion. I made one little joke online and suddenly you're deciding we're monsters. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. One little joke. I repeated quietly. You called me drama while I was in a cardiac ward. She rolled her eyes, sexually rolled them. You weren't dying. You said it was mild. Mild. As if the adjective reduced the experience to nothing, Ethan, who had been flipping through the paperwork with growing panic, finally snapped back into the conversation. Mom, we can't afford to pay this. $1,300 a month. We don't have that kind of money. I looked around their immaculate living room, the one with the brand new leather furniture set and high-end entertainment system. A living room I now knew my money had quietly helped furnish. You can adjust your lifestyle, I said calmly. Sell a car, cut the extras, skip a vacation. Regular people do it every day. Ethan looked at me like I had suggested he auction off his children. You're punishing us because you're upset. He protested. No, I replied, forcing myself to stay steady. I'm creating boundaries. Something I should have done years ago. That word boundaries hung in the air like smoke from a fire they hadn't realized I'd finally put out. Just then, two small bodies burst through the sliding back door. The twins Oliver and Mia ran into the room laughing, their cheeks pink from playing outside. Mia darted toward me, throwing her arms around my waist with the uninhibited affection only children can offer. Grandma, did you bring us something? She asked, beaming up at me. My heart clenched. That innocent smile had always been my weakness, the thing Ethan and Lena leaned on whenever they needed to soften me up. The reason I had said yes far too many times. I hugged her back gently. Not today, sweetheart. Ethan watched the exchange closely, recognizing my hesitation and immediately attempting to weaponize it. Mom, he said, voice lowering into that practiced tone of emotional pressure. The kids love you. You really want them to grow up thinking their grandmother cut them out of her life over money? There it was. The guilt. The manipulation. The emotional bait. But I wasn't swallowing it anymore. The children are welcome in my home anytime, I told him. But my financial support is no longer part of the relationship. Lena let out a sharp breath. So you're choosing money over family? No, I said simply. I'm choosing self-respect. She scoffed like she'd heard a bad punchline. You're unbelievable. Ethan threw the paperwork onto the coffee table. This is insane. You're ruining everything. Mama. I repeated gently. I'm repairing everything. Sometimes that looks like breaking the parts that were already cracked. The room went quiet except for the soft hum of their air purifier. I stood, smoothing the front of my coat with hands that felt steadier than they had in months. Samuel closed his briefcase. I'll expect your first payment in 30 days, he said, addressing Ethan with professional neutrality. I turned to the twins, kneeling down to kiss the tops of their heads. I'll see you soon, my loves. But even as I said it, I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest, and Alina weren't going to make that easy. On our way to the door, Samuel paused as a voice drifted from the hallway. Lena, whispering sharply, I told you we should have pushed the assisted living thing harder. This is what happens when we don't act fast enough. My breath caught. Assisted living, act fast enough. The words slithered under my skin like ice water, and suddenly, I knew my heart attack hadn't just been bad timing, it had been an opportunity for someone else. Everything that came next would prove exactly how right that instinct was. Asterisk those whispered words. We should have pushed the assisted living thing harder, echoed in my mind long after I left Ethan's house. They clung to me through the drive home, through dinner, through the restless night that followed. Something about that sentence felt bigger, darker, more deliberate than ordinary disrespect. Asterisk assisted living wasn't just a casual suggestion. It was a plan they'd already had in motion. Asterisk the next morning, I woke with a sharp clarity I hadn't felt in years. I began searching through drawers, files, old millennial place where a clue might be hiding. Part of me expected to find nothing, that maybe my mind had connected dots that didn't exist. But I did find something. In the glove compartment of Ethan's car I had borrowed before my heart attack. Found a glossy brochure from a senior care facility called Ridgeview Terrace. It wasn't the kind of home you choose because you want your parent to thrive. It was the kind you choose because you want their house. Asterisk on the brochure, someone Nathan. Maybe Lene had circled the phrase memory care program, 24-hour supervision. Next to it, written in Lena's handwriting, were the words asterisk stage 1 evaluation needed ASAP. My stomach tightened. Evaluation. Of what? Of me. Asterisk, then came the message, unexpected. Chilling text from an unfamiliar number. Asterisk, Mrs. Hartwell. This is Alicia from Meadowview Senior Living. Your son reached out last year to schedule a consultation for you. We're following up to see if you're still interested in placement options. Asterisk placement. As if I were a piece of furniture. Asterisk, I forwarded the message to Samuel immediately. Within the hour, he called with a suggestion I didn't realize would change the course of everything. Asterisk, Dorothy. He said, this is beyond financial manipulation. You need a specialist. I'm referring you to someone who handles matters like this. Asterisk. That's how I ended up across a small cafe table from Sandra Rowan. A private investigator with a kind of calm, observant presence that made you feel both protected and exposed at the same time. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything, the ignored hospital calls, the photo, the caption, the financial drain, the assisted living whispers, the mysterious inquiries. Asterisk, when I finished. She asked only one question, asterisk. Do you want to know the whole truth, no matter what it reveals? I didn't hesitate. Yes, asterisk. Sandra didn't waste time. Over the next 2 weeks, she dug through records, contacted facilities, traced financial transactions, and requested logs from my doctor's office. Each update she gave me was another puzzle piece clicking into place, pieces forming an image I didn't want to see but could no longer deny. Asterisk, one afternoon, Sandra came to my house holding a folder so thick it looked like it might burst. She set it on my dining table and took a slow breath. Asterisk, I'm going to walk you through this gently, she said, and I want you to pause me whenever you need to. I braced myself. It wasn't enough. Asterisk, over the last 11 months, Sandra began, your doctor received 3 separate calls from someone claiming to be a concerned family member asking if you showed signs of confusion, forgetfulness, or unusual emotional behavior. Asterisk, I felt my chest tighten. I've never had issues like that. Asterisk, I know, she said. Your doctor documented that each evaluation was normal. But these calls were clearly attempts to build a case for cognitive decline. Asterisk, I stared at the folder, feeling a chill spread through my limbs. Asterisk, there's more, Sandra continued, sliding a page toward me. Your son and daughter-in-law met with an elder law attorney 6 months ago. The attorney specializes in guardianship proceedings. Guardianship. The word hit me so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. Guardianship would have given Ethan full control over my finances, medical decisions, and most importantly, my home. Asterisk, Sandra's expression softened, but her tone stayed steady. Asterisk, I believe they were preparing to declare you mentally incompetent. Once the court granted guardianship, they could place you in an assisted living facility against your will. Asterisk, I swallowed, throat tightening painfully. Why? Why would they do that? Sandra didn't look away. Because guardianship would make it easier to transfer your assets, including your house. It felt like air was being sucked out of the room. Sandra placed her hand gently over mine. Dorothy, I'm sorry, but your son wasn't just being neglectful. He was laying groundwork. Asterisk. My voice came out as a whisper. To get rid of me? Asterisk, to control you, she said softly, and everything you own. Asterisk, I sat back, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. Not because I was surprised, but because deep down, a part of me had suspected something was off. I had felt it not consciously, but in the way I had clung to hope for far too long. Asterisk, Sandra closed the folder but kept her hand on it. Asterisk, now we decide what to do with this. She said, and I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the truth. Asterisk, I was ready for it. Sandra returned a few days later with a more detailed breakdown of her findings. She moved methodically, like someone who had delivered painful truths before, but never carelessly. I sat across from her at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea I had forgotten to drink. Asterisk, I traced every financial request your son made in the last 5 years, she said, opening a folder. And the money didn't go where he said it did. A heaviness settled in my chest. Of course it didn't. But hearing it confirmed was still a wound. For example, she continued, the $15,000 he said was for Mia's medical procedure. That money was transferred directly to a cosmetic clinic under your daughter-in-law's name. Asterisk, my breath caught. She used that for asterisk aesthetic surgery, Sandra said gently, confirming what I already knew. She turned another page. The $20,000 he claimed was for roof repairs. It paid for a week-long family vacation, flights, resorts, excursions, all of it. Asterisk, I felt something inside me crack. Not because of the money I could survive that loss. It was the intention behind it. The deception. The entitlement. The certainty that I wouldn't question anything. Asterisk, Sandra gave me a moment before continuing. Asterisk, but this isn't the worst of it. Sliding over a packet of printed emails. I accessed communication logs between your son and a consultant named Devin Kessler. Asterisk, I frowned. Consultant. For what? Asterisk, Sandra's eyes held mine. For establishing grounds to pursue guardianship. My stomach lurched. She pointed to one email. He provides strategies on documenting behavior, exaggerating incidents, and creating a narrative of decline. Things like encouraging you to repeat stories, asking you to recall details under stress, prompting frustration, then writing it down as evidence. She handed me a screenshot. My name was in the subject line. Asterisk, initial observations, emotional volatility. Inconsistent memory, impaired judgment. Asterisk, I felt the world tilt. That's not true. Asterisk, I know, Sandra said. But this wasn't about truth. It was about paperwork that painted a story. Asterisk, I leaned back, rubbing my hands together, feeling suddenly cold. Asterisk, Dorothy, she said softly. There's a reason your daughter-in-law's comment about pushing the assisted living plan sounded so rehearsed. Because it was. This consultant coached them. Every step was designed to make guardianship appear necessary. The edges of my vision blurred as the memory of that Instagram post flashed again in my mind, my son smiling over champagne while I lay in a hospital bed. Asterisk, how close were they? I asked quietly. Asterisk, Sandra hesitated, then answered with brutal honesty. Very. If you hadn't taken back financial control when you did, and if that heart attack had left you even slightly disoriented, they would have filed the petition. And given the amount of fabricated documentation, a judge might have granted it. Asterisk, the floor seemed to tilt under me. Asterisk, they had planned my entire future without me. Asterisk, a future where I couldn't decide where I lived, what I spent, who I saw, asterisk, whether I stayed in my own home. Asterisk, I swallowed hard. So, what do we do now? Asterisk, that depends, she said. Do you want legal consequences? Or protection? Or both? Both, I whispered, before I even realized the word had formed. Sandra slid over another document. Your lawyer is already updating your estate plan. I'll coordinate with him to build a timeline, dates, messages, financial transfers, misleading claims. None of this will be a surprise legally once we present the documentation. Asterisk. Her voice softened. But there's something else you need to consider. I looked up warily. People who attempt guardianship for financial gain don't stop easily. Once they realize you're shutting doors, they may escalate. Asterisk, a chill ran down my spine. Escalate? How? Asterisk, pressure, guilt, manipulation, maybe threats. They may even try to flip the narrative that you're unstable, paranoid, confused. I'm prepared, I said, but my voice trembled. Sandra reached out, placing her hand over mine. You're stronger than you think. But I won't lie, this is going to hurt. Asterisk, I've already been hurting, I admitted. Now I want the truth. Sandra nodded, then delivered the final blow of the day. There is one more thing. Something I found just this morning. Asterisk. She pulled out a printed transcript of a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. My name was mentioned. My property. My financial accounts. Terms like quiet title process and property transfer. Asterisk, I believe, Sandra said slowly, that your son and this consultant were discussing the method they plan to use to legally shift ownership of your house after moving you out. Asterisk, for a moment, I couldn't breathe. They had been plotting my removal. Not metaphorically, literally. I closed my eyes, teeth pressing together, a burning heat rising from somewhere deep in my chest. Asterisk, when I opened them. The fear was gone. In its place was resolve. Tell me what we do next, I said. Asterisk, and for the first time, I felt like I was finally stepping into my own power. Asterisk, 3 weeks passed, and with each day, the situation sharpened into something clearer and far more dangerous than I'd wanted to believe possible. Sandra continued digging. And my attorney, Samuel, handled the legal restructuring like a man, methodically sealing every window in a house before a hurricane. Together, they were building a wall around my life. One I should have built years earlier. Asterisk. But it wasn't until I sat across from Catherine Marsh, my new financial advisor, that I realized how deep the transformation truly needed to go. Asterisk, her office was quiet, polished, with warm lighting and shelves filled with thick binders labeled with tidy gold lettering. Catherine had a composed, almost serene presence, the kind that made you feel at once calm and completely exposed. Asterisk, I've reviewed everything you and your team provided, she said, tapping the enormous stack of documents on her desk. What your son attempted wasn't amateur manipulation. This was a coordinated effort with intent. Asterisk, I nodded, already numb to the phrase. I'd been hearing versions of it for days. Asterisk, so what do we do? I asked. Asterisk, Catherine folded her hands. We protect everything you own, not just from unauthorized access, but from future legal attempts to claim incompetence. Asterisk, the way she said incompetence made my stomach twist. It was a word I still wasn't used to being associated with. She outlined the plan piece by piece. First, she helped transfer my house into a revocable trust under my own management, untouchable by Ethan, unreachable by anyone but me. From there, she restructured my accounts so no one else could influence or monitor them. She set up separate reserves, emergency funds, and documentation logs that left no room for questionable interpretation. Asterisk, but the most surprising recommendation was what came next. Asterisk, Dorothy, she said gently. The best way to prevent guardianship attempts is to create something that reallocates your resources in a way no one can challenge. Asterisk, what does that mean? I asked. Asterisk, it means using your assets for something intentional. Something no family member can later claim was irresponsible or impulsive. Asterisk, she slid a folder across the desk to me. On the cover was a name typed in bold letters. The Hartwell Initiative for Senior Protection. I blinked. A foundation. Asterisk, exactly, she said. One that focuses on helping seniors recognize, report, and prevent financial mistreatment from relatives or caregivers. It's structured in a way that shields your assets behind charitable protection. You maintain full control of operations. But the funds dedicated to the foundation cannot be seized, redirected, or interfered with by future guardianship claims. Asterisk, I stared at the folder, running my fingers over the raised lettering. A foundation, me. Asterisk leading something like that? Asterisk, before I could question it, Catherine added. And you'd be surprised how many seniors would benefit from someone who understands what they've been through. Someone with your voice, asterisk. My throat tightened unexpectedly. No one had ever put it like that, asterisk Sandra's findings, the betrayal, the heart attack. The years of quiet financial erosion, it all suddenly felt less like a personal catastrophe and more like a warning that had arrived just in time, asterisk. Catherine smiled as she saw my expression shift. This turns your story into something powerful, and it sends a message to your son that his control's permanently over. Asterisk, by the time our meeting ended, I had signed documents that not only protected my future, but rebuilt my identity from the ashes Ethan and Lena had tried to bury me in. Asterisk, later that week. Catherine called again. Your first community speaking date is confirmed, she said. The center is expecting a large turnout. Asterisk, speaking? I repeated. To who? Asterisk, 2 seniors, she said, and their adult children. Local media may be attending as well. Asterisk, I wasn't sure I had anything worth saying to a crowd, but Catherine simply answered. You'd be surprised how many people need someone to go first. Asterisk, and then right on schedule. The message arrived from Ethan. Asterisk, Mom. We need to talk. I think we all made mistakes. Let's start fresh. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. Asterisk. It was fear of the paperwork he'd received. The shifting legal power. The realization that the money he'd always assumed would be his was now permanently out of reach. Asterisk. Catherine emailed me later that night. They received the legal documentation today. Asterisk, Sandra sent confirmation an hour after that. I delivered their packet personally. The reaction was immediate. Asterisk, I imagine Ethan sitting at his kitchen table, flipping through page after page of evidence, every lie exposed, every fabricated story stripped bare. The truth laid out in cold, black and white. Asterisk, that evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, the sun sinking low behind the trees. For the first time in months, my heart didn't race at every thought. I didn't feel hunted, or fragile, or uncertain. I felt grounded whole. Mine the next day would bring confrontation. I could sense it. But for once, the idea didn't scare me. Asterisk, I wasn't the woman they thought they could take advantage of. Anymore, asterisk, I was becoming someone they didn't know how to handle, and I wasn't done. The doorbell rang the following evening at exactly 6 o'clock. The punctuality alone told me everything I needed to know. Ethan was rattled. Desperation has a way of making people suddenly respect schedules they never cared about before. Asterisk, when I opened the door. Both he and Lena stood on my porch. They looked smaller somehow, diminished not physically, but in presence. Lena's makeup was smudged, her eyes red. Ethan's shoulders sagged as if the weight of the documents he'd received had finally crushed the last of his confidence. Asterisk, Mom, he said, voice rough. Can we come in? Asterisk, I stepped aside. Not because I owed them comfort, but because I wanted no doubt about what would happen next. They sat stiffly on the couch while I took my favorite chair. The same chair where I'd spent years listening to their excuses. Where I'd hoped they would eventually treat me with respect. It almost felt symbolic now. Asterisk, Ethan cleared his throat. We got the papers from that investigator of yours? Asterisk, Lena buried her face in her hands. This is all a giant misunderstanding, she cried, though even her tears sounded rehearsed. Asterisk, I didn't respond. Silence, when held firmly, can be more powerful than any accusation. Asterisk, Ethan tried again. Mom, this looks really bad, okay? All these documents, this whole picture, it makes it seem like we were trying to hurt you. Asterisk, were you not? I asked quietly. Asterisk, Lena's head snapped up. Of course not. We were trying to help you. You've been acting overwhelmed, emotional, forgetful. Asterisk, forgetful. I repeated. Explain that? Asterisk. She faltered. Well, the bills. The way you didn't remember things sometimes. And when you got angry, asterisk, when you accused me of faking a heart attack. I asked, The color drained from her face. Ethan leaned forward. Mom, we didn't mean it like that. We were stressed. The kids were busy. You know how life gets. Asterisk, I stared at them. Two adults who had twisted every part of my life into something they could use. It wasn't anger I felt now, it was clarity. Asterisk, why did you consult a guardianship lawyer? I asked. Asterisk, Ethan flinched. Lena stiffened. Neither spoke. Asterisk, when the silence stretched, I continued. Why did you call assisted living facilities? Why did you track my so-called memory lapses in a notebook? Why did you meet with a consultant who specializes in removing seniors from their homes? Ethan's face contorted with an expression I'd never seen on him panic. You weren't supposed to find any of that, he blurted before he could stop himself. Asterisk, Lena elbowed him hard. But it was too late. Asterisk, I leaned back, stunned by how unsurprising the admission felt. A piece of me had known all along. Asterisk, Lena jumped in quickly, scrambling. Okay, yes, we looked into guardianship, but only because we were worried you'd put yourself in danger. You hired some investigator who cost you thousands. You gave away money. You were letting emotions control everything. Asterisk, the investigator protected me. I corrected. You were trying to control me. Asterisk, Ethan's composure finally cracked. Mom, we were trying to get ahead of a situation. If something happened to you, asterisk, something did happen to me, I said, and you were at a restaurant celebrating. Lena opened her mouth, but no words came out. I continued, voice steady. You didn't come to the hospital. You didn't call. You didn't care. And then the moment you needed something, you suddenly cared very much. Asterisk, Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. Look, the money is tight. We've had setbacks. Maybe we handled things badly, but we're still your family. You can't just erase us. Asterisk, I'm not erasing you, I said calmly. I'm refusing to continue being used. Asterisk, Lena's frustration boiled over. Are you really going to destroy your relationship with your son because of a miscommunication? Asterisk, you didn't miscommunicate, I replied. You planned. Asterisk, Ethan swallowed hard. So that's it. You're choosing them. He gestured vaguely to the documents stacked neatly on my end table, the trusts. The contracts, the foundation paperwork. I'm choosing myself, I said. His voice rose in desperation. Mom, if you keep pushing us away, the kids will think you don't want anything to do with them. Asterisk. Ah, there it was. The last card in their deck. The one I'd always fallen for. This time, I didn't waver. The children are welcome here anytime, I said. But their parents are not entitled to my safety, my money, or my obedience. Asterisk, Lena stood abruptly. Well, then I guess we'll just have to make decisions without you. Asterisk, that's your right, I replied. Just as it's my right to protect myself. Asterisk, Ethan looked at me with something between disbelief and heartbreak. You're not the mom I remember. Asterisk, I know, I said softly. I finally stopped apologizing for being alive. They left without another word. I watched their car pull away, leaving only the sound of the quiet street and the beating of my own heart steady, strong and resurrected. Asterisk, I didn't know it then, but the next phone call I received would change everything. The call came just after sunrise the next morning, a time of day when nothing good ever rings. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up anyway. Mrs. Hartwell. A woman asked, her tone firm but polite. This is Detective Rivera from the State Financial Crimes Division. I need to speak with you regarding an active investigation involving your son. My heart thudded painfully. My son, is he hurt? No, ma'am, but he is involved in something serious. Are you available to meet today? I agreed, though my hands shook as I set the phone down. I sat for a moment in the silence of my living room, feeling the tension of an entirely new chapter creeping up around me. When Detective Rivera arrived, she carried a thick folder under her arm, thicker than anything Sandra had given me. She accepted the cup of coffee I offered, but didn't drink it. Instead, Stu opened the folder on my table and began with a breath that told me she didn't enjoy what she was about to say. "We've been tracking a fraudulent guardianship network for nearly a year," she said. "It involves a handful of consultants who coach families on petitioning for guardianship to gain control over seniors' assets." A chill rolled down my spine. She flipped open the folder. The first photo was of a man I had never seen. Cold eyes, sharp smile. The kind of face that gives you a bad feeling even on paper. This man is named Devin Kessler. He meets with families and guides them through creating a false narrative of cognitive decline. He's been connected to several cases across the state. Oh, my stomach tightened. Sandra had mentioned the name in passing, but seeing him in connection with a criminal investigation made everything unbearably real. Detective Rivera slid another photo toward me. Ethan and Lena sitting across from the same consultant at a small Olt's restaurant table. My breath caught. "That's them," she said softly. "We obtained these images as part of a larger surveillance operation. It appears your son hired Mr. Kessler to prepare a guardianship case against you." Her words were brutal in their simplicity. I pressed a hand over my heart, feeling it pound against my ribs. "But why?" Detective Rivera met my gaze without flinching. "Money, property, and because you trusted him enough that the courts likely would have granted it if he presented the right evidence." For a moment, the room blurred. I felt like I was falling through the floor. It was one thing to suspect, another to know. Detective Rivera continued gently. "We believe your hospitalization accelerated their timeline. They likely intended to use it as an example of instability or declining health." Swallowed hard. "What happens now?" "That depends on your willingness to cooperate," she said. "We've arrested Kessler. He's naming clients, including your son. But we want direct evidence from your interactions." I didn't need time to think. I'd spent enough of my life waiting for Ethan to choose decency. "Yes," I said, "I'll cooperate." So the next day, I met Ethan at a small cafe under the department's direction, wearing a wire. I had expected him to come nervous, defensive, maybe remorseful. Instead, he arrived excited, hopeful. He spoke freely. He explained the house he wanted to buy in another state. He talked about moving me into a facility near them. He described the financial plans they'd made once everything settled. And then he said the words I will never forget. "Mom, you weren't going to use that money anyway. This way, it helps the family. You should be grateful we stepped in." It's grateful. I sat still, letting the recorder catch every syllable. By the time I excused myself to the bathroom, my signaled that the conversation was complete. Detective Rivera and 2 officers were already entering the cafe. Ethan's face changed from confusion to shock as they handcuffed him. "Mom, what's happening?" "Mom, say something." But I didn't, because for the first time, the consequences belonged to him, not me. He was charged with attempted financial exploitation, conspiracy, and participating in a fraudulent guardianship scheme. Kessler's case implicated him deeply. And Lena filed for divorce within the month. She moved with the kids to her parents' home out of state. It hurt not the loss of Ethan, but the distance from the children. Still, she sent me photos sometimes. Quiet olive branches I never expected, but deeply appreciated. Life didn't return to what it was before. It became something new. The foundation grew quickly, faster than any of us imagined. Seniors came forward with stories so familiar it made my chest ache. Families wrote to thank me. Advocacy groups asked me to speak at events. The media called more often than I liked, but each time I talked, someone somewhere finally recognized the danger in their own home. One afternoon, months later, as I sat reviewing paperwork for an upcoming seminar, a small envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a drawing. 3 stick figures, 2 small ones holding hands with a larger one. Underneath, written in careful 7-year-old handwriting, were the words, "Grandma Dorothy, we miss you." My throat tightened, but for the first time in a long time, the pain didn't break me. It reminded me why I fought. I placed the drawing beside my desk lamp and whispered, "I'm still here." And I was still here, still strong, still mine. The story didn't end the way I once hoped, but it ended in truth. In safety, in purpose, and sometimes survival itself is the ending you earn.